So I think we're going to get started with board books. And so I've got two board books, two books for the sort of youngest of our readers that I would love to share. We've got Dinosaurs, which is part of the Nerdy Babies series. This is a lot of fun as a whole, this series. And who doesn't love dinosaurs? I think grown-ups love dinosaurs, toddlers love dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are great. And so this board book does a really nice job combining some really substantive dino facts. Dinosaurs were reptiles that walked upright. And it has like the timeline of sort of all the different eras that dinosaurs lived in. So some really substantive content, but also really approachable, just really lovely, bold illustrations that a baby, a toddler will be able to latch onto. You'll wind up with a lot of great dino vocabulary coming out of your 2-year-old, 3-year-old, but it's a fun read for mom and dad as well. And going even younger, we've got Leo Loves Daddy and Leo Loves Mommy. And I'm holding up a paper printout of these because they are popular enough that at the library, they were both out today. And so Leo Loves Daddy and Leo Loves Mommy, if you're going for the infant or young toddler set, again, just really bold, sweet illustrations of a loving family. It goes through in each one Leo's everyday activities, things like waking up and getting a tickle on his stomach, helping dad make pancakes with his high chair and a humongous sort of sloppy bowl of batter spouting out everywhere. And it's just a really, really sweet set of books. Again, just enough funny detail in there that the parents will laugh too. And there's Leo and Lola by Anna McQuinn. These two characters continue to grow into picture books as well. Leo grows up and does things like get his first checkup and go swimming, that sort of the early preschool set can find approachable. And then Lola actually starts to have her first day in kindergarten, things like that. So there are series that you guys can follow along with as kids grow as well. So next we're going to head into picture books, preschool and school age set. I think Heidi can start us off with some of those.
Okay. I absolutely love picture books. When they come into the store, I get all giddy and excited, and I grab them before they come out of the back, before they go on the shelf. I sit myself down and I go through them, and these are my 4 favorite, and I might get a little excited about all of them, but I'll try and keep it short. My first favorite is A Thing Called Snow. This is by Yuval Zomer, I should say. He wrote and I guess illustrated The Tree That's Meant to Be, which was a very big hit for us last year. It was about a little tree that was in the forest that got zero attention. And then it grew and grew. And then years later, it became the tree in the forest and was decorated for the holidays. And it was so magical. And when I saw this come out, I went nuts. It's about a fox and a hare who are best friends, who don't know what snow is because they're very young and they've never experienced it. So they go through the forest and they ask all their friends, all the forest animals, do you know what snow is? And so they the illustrations are just darling. And it starts in the autumn, and it hasn't snowed yet. So they go on this adventure and they fall asleep and they're far from home, and they wake up and lo and behold, it has snowed, but they don't know how to get home. So all the animals come and find them and show them their way home. It is absolutely magical, beautiful. It's all about friendship and adventure. I loved it. Second, and the illustrations, these are all going to be very fabulously illustrated. The other one, this is another fan favorite, I should say, and it's by the Fan Brothers. Their illustrations are unparalleled. they did another book that is a favorite of mine called The Antlered Ship. And the author, I just wrote it down, is Dashka Slater. And they illustrated that. And it's a great, great book for boys and read aloud. But this one is black and white. And the only color is this incredible marble that falls from heaven above into the grass. And all the bugs marvel at this marble, and they don't know what it is until the spider determines that it must have fallen down for him and him alone. So he creates this web and captures this marble, and he becomes the most selfish, unfriendly spider you'll ever meet. And he treats his bug friends very poorly by charging them leaves to come marvel at the marble. Well, they during the story, they've had enough and they abandon him, and he has to figure out how to get his friends back. So at the end of the story, you see the transition of the spider and what happens to him in order to welcome his friends back into his world. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And lots of other things fall down into the grass that you never knew existed. My third is The Midnight Fair by Gideon Stirrer, or Stirrer. I don't know how to pronounce it. It is a wordless picture book. It's magical. The illustrations are gorgeous. You could read this book a million times and still come up with a different story. It's all about what happens when the fair closes. After all the kids go home, the rides are shut down, the cotton candy's put away. What transpires? Well, animals enjoy the fair as much as children, and they go and have the best time and get into all kinds of mischief. I mean, each illustration speaks volumes, and the questions that you can answer and ask your child are unbelievable. And like I said, it will always morph into a new story for you every time you read it. It's really fabulous. And my fourth one, and I love this book so much, and I keep trying to sell it, and everyone's like, no, I don't want a book about poop. I can't give my 3 and 4-year-old a poopy book. And I said, it's not it says I eat poop, but I guarantee you're not going to have a 3 and 4-year-old eating poop. So anyway, this is by Mark Pett, and it is, I would consider this a reference picture book, because in this are all the bugs and beetles and insects that we see every single day. There are horseflies, and there's butterflies and caterpillars and dung beetles and roly-polies and gnats and mosquitoes and earthworms. And it's the story about a dung beetle, a dung beetle eats poop by nature. And so he goes to school and he is ostracized because he's so embarrassed that he has to hide his lunch because it's full of poop. He has poop juice, he has a poop sandwich, he has poop pudding, and he hides it under a rock because he's mortified, and he eats by himself all the time. Well, one day he sits down next to, I believe it was the horsefly who eats poop too. And they find camaraderie, and the cool bugs enlist him to play a joke on the horsefly. Well, he's about to do it, and he decides against it because all of a sudden somebody in the crowd feels bad and says, hey, wait a minute. I breathe through my armpits. Now, these are all facts of bugs. Certain bugs breathe through their armpits. A worm has a brain at one end and a heart at the other end. And so they all find that they have all very special and special differences that make them stand out, and not necessarily in a positive way when compared to another bug. So anyway, it's a story about acceptance and how they all, eventually learn that everybody has a place at the table and everybody fits in. And even though they're so different and you might not understand why certain bugs do certain things or why they act a certain way or what they eat, it's everybody is part of the same family. So I thought it's a great story about just fitting in and acceptance, and it's hilarious. And I challenge any adult to keep a straight face while reading this book. I mean, it is laugh out loud funny. And like I said, it's full of reference to actual bugs. And you could go in the backyard with your kid and this book and find all these bugs. It's fabulous. And they'll hoot and holler, and it's just so fun. Just don't be dissuaded by the title, I Eat Poop. It's funny, please. It's awesome. So that's my picture book extravaganza.
I've got a few picture books as well. I think, like Heidi, just love picture books. This one, Z Grows a Tree. This is the only one that's explicitly a holiday book that I'm going to be talking about today. And it's also just about so much more than what sort of the standard holiday book is. So Z is growing up on a Christmas tree farm, and she's Z Cooper. When the day that Z is born, her tree also, a little seed gets planted and starts to sprout at Cooper's tree farm. And Z grows up and eventually leaves her house, goes to school, and the tree grows up and goes out of the tree nursery and out into the yard. And at every stage of Z's growing up, sort of birth through sort of elementary school age, the tree is growing in parallel. And so this book has, on every spread, you're learning about Z and also about the tree. There are these little sort of small sections of text sort of interspersed on every spread that tell you a cool fact about the way that a fir tree grows, what's happening to the tree at a certain stage, when's its trunk getting big, when is it starting to develop roots into the ground. I read this with a school group of second graders lately, and it was really cool to see them realize how Z and the tree were growing up parallel to each other, and just seeing that click and sort of the light in their eyes when they saw that click. And they were also really, really taken with the fact it's just interesting to see how the tree comes about. There are things that you just, even as an adult, you wouldn't know about it. At the end, Z is tall enough to finally put a star on top of the Christmas tree, and the tree is tall enough to be a Christmas tree as well. It's got a nice little holiday touch. Then for just hilarious books, got Shea Bob by Bob Shea. So a little joke from the start. So Bob is an alligator, and he is hungry. And he decides that the easiest way to catch a bird is by building a restaurant on his nose. So the birds will come, they'll land on his snout, eventually he'll snap them up. And so one bird's okay, but maybe he needs to make the restaurant bigger. So he starts this very, very elaborate restaurant, winds up growing on his nose. Table after table, he adds umbrellas, he adds snacks that the birds are going to love, and all the birds come. But as the birds are sitting there, they haven't really wound up in his mouth, they're more on top of it. And he finally has an opportunity to snap them all up. But will he do it? And so this one, it's really funny. It's bright colors, goofy details. The dialogue's hilarious, and it winds up in a really sweet message. Spoiler, he doesn't eat the birds. He saves them, becomes their friends instead. But it's a lovely one if you want gift for sort of preschool and all the way through like mid-elementary school, just someone who wants a laugh. And the last picture book on my list today is My Brother the Duck. This one, it's a really goofy spin on the new sibling books. So there is a young girl who is waiting for her sister or her brother to come. This is Stella waiting for her brother. And one day, mom is really, really pregnant and she sort of waddles around the house. And dad makes a joke, oh, there must be a duck inside your belly. And Stella is also a budding scientist. And she decides that she needs to test this theory out. And so after her brother is born, she starts observing very carefully and sees him swaddled in a duck bath towel, sees him making some funny noises, and the evidence grows and grows that yes, he must be a duck. So it's a really hilarious look at the new sibling books. It's also a really fun one just in terms of scientific process. Stella does a really good job making a hypothesis and testing it out. So it's a good one if someone's waiting for a sibling, if somebody already has a new little one in the house. I would say this one for preschool or like early elementary probably. And so we're moving now into early chapter books and easy readers. So kind of that early elementary set. So I am a huge fan of funny books in that vein, and DJ Funkyfoot is a great one. So DJ Funkyfoot is not a DJ. His parents wanted him to be a DJ. They named him DJ, but he became a butler instead. And there's unfortunately not a lot of demand for butler chihuahuas. So he keeps getting phone calls asking for a DJ. He can't do that. And he eventually settles for a babysitting job. And he's going to be nanny to this shrub baby. And it seems like a good enough idea because nannying is kind of closer to buttling than DJing would have been. But Shrub Baby realizes that as a DJ Funkyfoot is not, or as a butler, DJ Funkyfoot is not allowed to say no to any request. And Shrub Baby has a lot of outrageous requests. So it's a really goofy one. Just early elementary kids who are looking for something that'll make them laugh. I think definitely recommend that. Another sort of goofy one, this one for easy reader set. And this one again, so popular that I've got a hold of a paper. Is Pizza and Taco the Best Party Ever? So Pizza and Taco are best friends. They are also a pizza and a taco. They decide that they're bored and they're going to hold a party. But nothing goes right in their party planning, no matter how many lists they make and how carefully they set out to do everything. This one has a lot of sort of repeated controlled vocabulary, repeated very simple text, speech bubbles, and a lot of white space around them. So it's a really good one for kids who are starting to learn to read independently. That sort of new reader set, developing readers. And it's one that also feels grown up enough that those first and second graders who really want to be reading something a little more mature will feel good about this one. The last one in the sort of new reader set got Starla Jean. There are actually two out right now, but this one's the beginning one, which came first, the chicken or the friendship. Again, so popular that it is out, hard to get a hold of. So Starla sees a chicken wandering around the park one day, and she asks her dad, can she take it home? And dad says, yeah, sure, you can take it home if you catch it. And he's positive she's not going to. But Starla is determined, and lo and behold, she catches the chicken. So this one, Starla now has this chicken. She doesn't really know what to do with the chicken. And she slowly starts following through and doing some chicken research and learning how to be a good friend to a chicken. So there's a little bit of kind of fun information in there. It's just a really goofy story and a really sweet story about the friendship that Starla and her chicken develop. And that one is a good one for sort of really new independent readers also. It's that kind of first grade, second grade, when they're reading a little more fluently than with Pizza and Taco, but still pretty new to the reading. So we're heading now into fiction and graphic novels for the middle grade set. So sort of that later elementary, early middle school. And so I'll get us started with a few and then pass it back to Heidi, who has a bunch of great ones as well. So Allergic, we've got sort of for anyone who loves the Raina Telgemeier books, Smile and Guts, Sisters, any of those, anyone who's reading the Babysitter's Club series, or the Babysitter's Little Sister, kids who like that sort of real life feel, sort of everyday problems that feel really dramatic in the moment. So Maggie feels left out. She's in a family where a baby's on the way. She has twin brothers who just want to be with each other. And Maggie has convinced her parents that she needs someone to play with. She needs a dog. And Maggie's parents say, sure, we can get you a dog. They go to pick out the pet dog and Maggie breaks out in hives. Maggie's allergic. So Maggie is determined not to let this stop her from getting her pet. And so it's really just the everyday sort of school life, family life, and can Maggie find a pet that works for her despite her allergies? Next one, got Magical Imperfect. This is just a really beautiful book in verse. And I've been talking a lot with kids lately in my book groups and school visits about books in verse, and they've been just really fascinated by the fact that there are books written as poetry. So definitely a nice thing to introduce. In the Magical Imperfect, Eitan is heartbroken. His mom had to go to the hospital. He doesn't know when she's coming back, and he just can't bring himself to talk. He won't talk to his friends. He won't talk to his father, his grandfather, and people really don't know what to do to help him. So little by little, people are starting to drift away. One day, Eitan's grandfather asks him to deliver groceries to a girl named Malia. And Malia is also sort of isolated. She has a skin condition. Kids at school tease her and call her the creature so much that she has stopped going to school. But Eitan thinks that he knows how to cure Malia, if only he can figure out, sort of find the strength to talk and find a way to tell her about it. So it's just it's a really sweet story of friendship. It's a more introspective, kind of thoughtful story, but just with a lot of warmth. And it's a pretty approachable novel in verse for anyone who might be new to novels in verse form. The last one on, I've got two more actually. So I've got Both Can Be True, which is for the older middle grade readers. So sort of late elementary school, I would probably go middle school, like early middle school more for this one. And this is a good pick for anyone who is looking for books that kind of touch on some more social issues, who are sort of starting to wonder about identities and just what it means to be you and to feel a little bit different. So Ash and Daniel both feel like outsiders. Ash some days feels like a boy, some days feels like a girl. And Daniel, people tell him that he's too emotional. He just really reacts strongly to things. And the two feel pretty alone until one day Daniel rescues a dog. And he has to keep this dog secret. He can't tell anybody that he's taking care of this dog. But Ash agrees to help him out. And so together they share the secret of the dog and they start to become friends with each other. But Ash hasn't told Daniel sort of what's making him feel different, them feel different. And so Ash sort of wonders, will their friendship survive as they get to know each other more? And the last one, sort of circling back to a very goofy book again, Investigators. There are a whole bunch of books in this series now. This one I would say for early elementary through like 4th grade or so, 5th grade. Anyone who loves Dogman or Captain Underpants, that kind of slightly slapstick humor that still is also really smart, has a lot of wordplay. I think this is one of my favorites to recommend to that age group. It's a graphic novel, bright colors, about these two investigators, alligators who solve crimes. And they travel up through the toilets and pop out and solve and sort of fight crime that way. They have all these really cool gadgets. In this one, their nemesis has arrived and has developed an army of really super villainous characters that they need to fight. And it's the question of, can the investigators conquer the supervillains, or will they need to look out for themselves instead? But it's just a lot of really funny wordplay and just really funny creative detail. I can turn it over to Heidi. I think there's a few more.
Hi. I'm just looking at my books and I just realized I've picked 4 that are all about boys. I don't know why, but I am reading Out of My Heart, which is about a girl by Draper, which is absolutely phenomenal. I read Out of My Mind in like one sitting, and I'm so like I'm out of my mind for Out of My Heart. So that's my girl pick, but I didn't bring it tonight. I love middle school boys. I don't know what I had one. He's now 21, but I absolutely adore them. So here I go. One Last Shot by John David Alexander, right? Anderson, sorry, is a wonderful book for boys who are trying to find themselves. It's about a 12-year-old boy whose father, see if this rings true, is obsessed with sports and wants him to be the star athlete of everything. And he's just not having it. His name is Malcolm. He doesn't want to play all these sports, but you know what? He kind of likes miniature golf. So he finds a little mini golf course and he starts going to the golf course and he enjoys playing it. Well, his father gets wind of this and decides, oh, I have a new challenge. I'm going to sign him up for lessons. I'm going to enroll him in tournaments. And Malcolm is like, no, wait a minute. I just enjoy playing golf. It's so funny. It deals with, there are 2 parallel storylines. His parents aren't quite getting along right now either. And so he's trying to escape to this little golf course. He meets a young girl who's really quirky and, you know, a little different like he is, an older gentleman who becomes his coach, who he really becomes fond of. It's told in 18 chapters, 1 for each hole that he plays, and how he has to navigate and problem solve the hole, all the while problem solving his life and hoping to kind of solve his parents. And it's a wonderful story. It doesn't get tied up in a bow. There are some loose ends, but it really comes full circle. You fall in love with him. You fall in love with all the characters. There are odd moments that you just laugh out loud. Funny, there are touching moments. There are real life moments. It's just, it's so relatable for any young boy who, just, wants to just do his own thing and not fall into any kind of mold. So fabulous. Pony. For people who read Wonder, I did not read Wonder. I will go back and read Wonder. This book spoke to me because there's everything that I love in adult books. There's the Old West. There is the Civil War era. There is a ghost by the name of Mitten. I think it's Mitten Wool. It takes place, it's a single dad. Really cool storylines. It's about a boy by the name of Silas. He's 12 years old. He lives with his father, and in the middle of the night, they are woken up by a posse of men on horses, and they come and take his father away without reason. Silas is terrified, and all he has is this ghost friend that he speaks to by the name of Mittenwool, and he finds solace in him. The next morning, one of the ponies that was with the riders comes back without a rider, and he sees this as a sign. So he enlists Mittenwool to go with him on this pony to find his father. They embark on this adventure, and it is so exciting and fast-paced, and it draws the reader in. His father was a bootmaker and a scientist, and so he can't imagine what these evil men want to do with his dad. So he learns about things that maybe he didn't know about his father, whether they were true or not. And he meets all these kind of neat people along the way, and it's very harrowing, and the courage and just the sense of place it's gripping, it's gritty, it's a great story. I was so wrapped in Silas and his journey. It was really, it's harrowing, and it's exciting. It's adventure on another level. The next book is by Sarah Pennypacker, Pax Journey Home. I did not read Pax. You don't need to read Pax. You are treated to a lot of bits from the first book in this book. So she refreshes everyone's memory why Pax and Peter are not together anymore. So Peter had to leave Pax at the end of the first book. Pax went on to have a family. He's the fox. It's told in dual voices, so the fox is talking, but it's not silly. It's a really profound and a beautiful story about Pax, who has now cubs or kits, however you wanted to describe them. And one of his kits becomes ill. So he goes on a journey to find the only person that could possibly help him, and it's Peter. Peter, on the other hand, is living with someone who is not his family, just because he's so heartbroken that he's lost his father, and he decides to go on a journey of his own, trying to heal. There's an environmental twist to it, which I don't want to tell you too much about it, because it'll give too much of the adventure story and the way they find each other, if they do in the book. I'm not going to tell you because it's so good. But they do kind of try on their individual journeys, try to heal, try to grow, try to accept things that they don't want to accept, but unfortunately have to accept in order to become whole again. It's a wonderful story. It's about friendship. It's about a bond that can't be broken. It's just sweet, and it's loving, and it's wonderful. I hope there's a third. I really do. It's so good. All right, now this one, I wrote notes for this book. I read this book. I don't know why prompted me. I guess it said 2 million copies sold, and it was written in 1937 by a Japanese author. It is mandatory for all 13-year-olds in Japan to read this every summer. I was blown away by this book, and my dear friend Melissa Thorkelson sent me the New York Times review of it. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, after I had read it, and I had no idea how popular and how many people were reading it. And the New York Times gave it a glowing review. So long story short, it's going to be long. It's about a 13-year-old boy. Now this straddles, it's YA and middle school. I think it's older middle schoolers and young YA readers, boys, that really don't want to read anything that is, you know, I don't want to say extreme, but just like there's no drugs, there's no suicide, there's not things like that in this book. It's really a story about 4 boys. Copper is 15 years old. His father has passed away, but that's just so you can be introduced to his uncle, who writes him letters and gives him advice as he's going through young adulthood, at coming of age. And it's really about, it is so full. This book could have been written today. That's what blew me away. This was written in 1937, and it deals with the same issues that we are talking about today. It deals, I'm going to read them all because there's so many. It deals with humanity, poverty, betrayal, consequences, social class, belonging to something greater than yourself, the global community, kindness, respect. I mean, it's really, I strongly recommend anybody, girl, boy, adult. It's a great family book club. You can all read it. It has such profound questions to ask each other. There's one part in the book where the young boy Copper says, I have nothing in common with somebody, the farmer in Australia. And his uncle said, yes, you do. You have everything in common with the farmer in Australia. And he's like, how so? He said, well, you drink the powdered milk. Granted, it was 1937. I guess they drank powdered milk in 1937 in Japan. He said, how do you think the powdered milk gets to this table? He says, I have no idea. Well, it starts with the farmer in Australia who tends the cows. And then the cows produce the milk, and then it's processed, and then it's shipped, and then it arrives in Japan. And then the people unload it from the ships, and then it goes to the store, and then it ends up on your table. So you might not think you have anything in common with the person in Australia, but they're part of your life. And it's stories like this, and each chapter has something really interesting. And the friendships that he bonds with his 3 other friends. One is terribly poor, one is very wealthy. I mean, it is unbelievable. It touches your heart. I can't speak enough about this book. I think everybody needs to read this book, especially in today's climate. It is just beautifully written, and it's going to be made and there's a foreword by Neil Gaiman. And he wrote, if it means anything at all to live in this world, it's that you must live your life like a true human being and feel just what you feel. So please read this. It's great for the holidays. It's great for going forward. It's really, it'll be passed down through to grandchildren, to sons, everything. It's wonderful. And I highly recommend it. I absolutely love this book.
We've got a few more to do. So I'm circling back to nonfiction for the elementary set for a moment. And nonfiction that can sort of stretch into slightly older as well. But I think elementary and or whole family. So it's my book of butterflies. For anyone who is interested in science, natural world, but also anyone who just really enjoys a really beautiful, almost art book, coffee table book kind of thing. This is kind of, they take you through the general sort of what you know about butterflies, how they grow from caterpillars, but then after that, it becomes sort of all different spreads of just breathtaking images of butterflies, of all different species of butterflies from all around the world. And you learn where they live, how they adapt, just a lot of quick, quirky facts about them. But this is one you can kind of just leave out and pour over and kind of come back to again and again. And the other sort of artsy nonfiction book that I wanted to show is this What's Inside a Flower. And so this one, again, sort of, I would say probably early elementary, but also just whole family pour over it. It starts with how a flower grows, what are the pieces of a flower, but then it also talks in great depth about sort of what's inside the soil that's feeding your flower, what's inside the sort of what's coming out of the sky, where is it, how's it, when's it raining, what's in the air, sort of how each piece is coming. And it's got these kind of quirky little bugs who have a lot to say as they go along and kind of fill in a lot of the fun facts about the surrounding world beyond the flower. So I'm going to hand it off to Heidi to give us the kickoff to young adults.
Well, I read a lot of adult books as well, and I'm a huge historical fiction buff, and I read a lot about World War II. And I search out books now that do not take place in France or Germany or Italy. I'm like, World War II was everywhere. So this book, Traders Among Us by Marcia Forchuk Skripuk or Puk, I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, is wonderful. I think she wrote Making Bombs for Hitler. Many of you may have read it. And it's about two girls, sisters. Yay, I have a girl book. YA. I devoured this book. It takes place right towards the end of the Second World War in the Ukraine. These two sisters are put in a displaced persons camp. And they're accused of Russian officers, Soviet officers come in and they're looking for Nazi sympathizers or Nazi Hitler Youth or anybody who was supportive of Hitler. In this displaced persons camp, these two girls see a girl they know from a farm that was part of the Hitler Youth. And they don't rat her out, but she rats them out. But they're not part of the Hitler Youth. They're just trying to get away. So unfortunately, they're taken away by these Soviet officers. And that's where the story begins. It's literally in the first few pages. And it is harrowing. And what they go through and the resilience and the courage that it takes for them to get out of this interrogation that they have to succumb to. It is unbelievable. It might as well have been an adult. It doesn't read like an adult book, but it is so interesting that an adult could read it and get something out of it. It's a true story of survival, and I believe it is inspired by true accounts. I don't know if the author exactly is Ukrainian. It sounds like she may be, and this may be something that she's researched very well. It is fascinating. It's just gripping. It's gritty. They meet all kinds of people in this prison, and they're very clever as to how they're going to get themselves out of it. And there are ups and there are downs. It's not fluffy. And it's raw, but it is as good as any World War II historical fiction I read in adults. It's really, I'm glad they're writing, she wrote a book like this for a YA. I think it's fabulous. So get this one too, it's awesome.
Got two more on the YA side. So we've got The Box in the Woods. This one is also just really gripping, is a good word to get us into this one also. This one is Stevie Bell is riding high after solving the truly devious case in her high school. And some of you may recognize Stevie Bell. She was a character in a trilogy called Truly Devious. This is a standalone book that kind of complements that trilogy, but you can definitely get into it very easily from the start without having read the other ones. So amateur detective Stevie Bell is riding high after solving the truly devious case, but the school year is over and it's about to really not matter that she has this claim to fame. And her summer is looking like it's going to be super boring until Stevie gets a call from the owner of the Sunny Pines camp. And in 1978, at the Sunny Pines camp, there was a bit of a crime wave, and 4 counselors were murdered, and the crime was never solved. So the counselor is inviting Stevie in not to solve the crime, but to make a podcast about the events in 1978. And as Stevie starts to put together this podcast and tell the story of what happened back then, it turns out that there's still a lot of danger at this camp and still people who don't want the truth to come out. And Stevie's life and the lives of the other people at Sunny Pines may be in danger as the Box in the Wood mysteries come back. The last one that I've got is another kind of gripping edge of the seat read. So this is Thrive just came out, but this is part of the Overthrow series. There are 3 books. If you're going to get this for someone who has not read any of the series yet, start with number 1, which is Bloom. And so there's Bloom, then Hatch, then Thrive. And so in Bloom, the trouble begins. In Bloom, there's a lot of rain one day, and it's raining hard all over the world. And when this rain clears up, alien plant life starts to sprout, and it starts growing all over the houses, and it starts spouting out poison that can make people really, really sick. And it starts trying to find something to eat. And there are 3 teenagers who are immune to the poison that these plants bring. And they're very different from each other until they found out that they're the 3 immune ones. They really didn't think they had anything in common. But now they have to find out what it is that makes them special and why they're able to survive when nobody else seems to be able to take on this plant life. So in book 1 in Bloom, they come together and start trying to unravel the mystery and take on this alien life form. Things get more intense in Hatch, which is book 2. There are new alien forms invading, and there's just the stakes are raised quite a bit. And as you get into book 3, maybe there's a chance for peace if they play it right. But also, what does it mean about these 3 kids that they're the ones who hold the power to make that peace a reality or not? And do they want to make it peaceful? So it's really, every time you think that one of the questions this book has raised has been answered, there are 10 more questions that come up, and you just always, it's a page turner. It's hard to put this one down. This one could start with like early middle school and then read it all the way through high school, and there's just a lot to talk about. It's a good one to read with a couple of friends who are reading it as well. And I think that takes us through our holiday picks of the year. Does anyone, I've seen a couple of hands go up and down, but does anyone have any questions, comments, anything? We're happy to answer anything we can. And if not, if anyone needs to sign off, thank you so much.